After 6 months of use, my OnePlus 6T continues to be a battery life champion with a quick OEM charge time, super fast user interface, great display, and frequent security updates. I'm hoping that the device lasts me at least 3 more years, as there's very little that I dislike about it. Being a parent of young children has caused more frequent drops of my phones and affected my device stinginess dramatically. Thankfully, the OnePlus 6T has held up super well against my 2-year-old's germ-filled hands and stress-filled moments that have caused me to recruit my phone as a toy in a few first-world problems, subpar life scenarios. The included rubber case is far superior in the durability department to the clear one provided with my previous ZTE Axon 7, and has been through a wash or two thanks to the greasy encounters I described earlier. More importantly, it's left the 6T with 0 dings or scratches to speak of. The midnight black finish on the back continues to wow me every time I reluctantly remove the case to wash off whatever diseases my daughter could have spread around with her silly little hands. Firstly, I miss the minimum brightness of the Axon 7. It was able to dim beyond the barely tolerable level of the 6T. I try to shy away from using my phone with the lights off, but it's definitely something to get used to. It's not a huge problem though, and it became even less of an issue when I set a night mode schedule. Coming from a 2K display on my last phone, it was time to test the validity of the more pixels is always better school of thought that seems to be pretty well spread throughout the mobile tech scene. This was another lucky shot on my part because in daily use, including watching videos on the commute home, I noticed practically no differences. In fact, the 18:9 aspect ratio definitely makes the screen feel more substantial. I'd consider it more of an aesthetic upgrade than anything, but like many, I don't see the mobile industry ever looking back on this change. But hey, we're unfortunately saying the same thing about the headphone jack, which brings me to the biggest adjustment I had to make coming from the Axon 7, which was the audio experience. Honestly, I feel like I'm using an old iPhone when I listen to anything with the integrated speaker on the 6T. It sucks. And because of that, when I care about the audio quality of the media I'm consuming at the time, I resort to finding the nearest device that improves my listening. If I have no other options, I almost always find a way to cup the speaker with my hand, which isn't always the most convenient thing to do for a borderline germaphobe like myself. The saving grace of this travesty is Qualcomm's aptX technology, which both work and sound great with my Sennheiser Bluetooth noise-canceling headset, unless they run out of battery, which sentences me to the tormented dongle fields where many an Apple fan miserably shell their hard-earned money over to repeatedly buy, then lose their access to the glorious headphone jack. This is my sole reason to envy you Samsung Galaxy users. To be honest, though, just keep up on your Bluetooth set's battery percentage and you'll be fine, I promise. As with all of my previous phones, this has become my primary camera for filming my YouTube videos, so feel free to check out some recent stuff on my channel to judge the quality for yourself. I haven't chosen to get fancy with settings on this phone yet, simply because of how impressive the video quality seems to me. Recording 4K at 60 frames per second can only be done 5 minutes at a time using the pre-installed camera app, but it's totally worth using in situations that don't require really long recording sessions. On top of that, the photos I've taken in both good and bad lighting situations have been a far cry away from the chancy cameras on the Axon 7. Speaking of which, I have an Instagram account now, and it'll be featuring photos that are taken with this phone, so feel free to check that out too if you like stuff like that. However, the front-facing camera is pretty typical for a modern smartphone. I only really use it if I have no other options or my daughter just wants to take some selfies or something like that. When this phone came out, OnePlus was touting its 3700 milliamp hour battery as one of the most significant upgrades over its predecessor, the OnePlus 6. I can confidently say that even after 6 months, I can still get a day and a half out of it, from 80% to 15% if I'm a tad conservative. My usage habits have changed ever so slightly since my Axon 7 2-year video. I would say that I've pared down my core list of apps, but in turn have used those apps that I've chosen to install quite a bit more than I used to, specifically ones for writing notes, setting calendar reminders, and recording audio clips, because I forget things a lot. So because of that, I would argue that my screen on time during a single day hasn't increased very much. What has changed is my charging strategy. Since day one, I've done my best to not allow my 6T to be charged above 80% and to fall below 15%, which also means that overnight charging is an absolute no-no. There have been a few hiccups, but not many, as I tend to trickle charge in the car if I happen to need an extra few minutes to push through an event or something similar like that. I don't have tons of proof to say that using the 80-20 rule for phone batteries really does much for longevity, but it hasn't been too much of a hamper on my lifestyle, except for the overnight charging, which did take some mental discipline to get over. Thankfully, I haven't had to fret that much because of Dash Charge. It's both the quickest and slowest charging phone I've ever used, depending on which cable and brick I happen to have on me. Seriously, finding Dash Charge certified cables is still nowhere near as easy and affordable as it is to find quick charge stuff here in the United States. For users in other countries, please let me know what your experience is finding Dash Charge certified stuff. I'm sure it's at least a little bit easier than it is here. But lastly, I can't praise this phone's software experience enough. I also don't think that you can purely blame the whopping 8 gigs of RAM that's packed into this phone. Like most reviewers have said, it's an Android skin that simply gets out of your way. It's very apparent that time and care was put into the ergonomics and user efficiency of Oxygen OS 9. Everything flows just as smoothly as it did out of the box 6 months later, which is quite a feat due to the almost chaotic nature of release schedules of modern operating systems, security patches, and software upgrades. But when the upgrades do happen, they've always seemed to notify me sooner than I would normally expect, which is a nice surprise. I am the type that gets a little bit giddy when an OS update is released, and that extra little dopamine rush has been a relatively regular occurrence with the 6T. Not to mention that there have been 0 memorable or day-breaking bugs in the public releases, so please give us more of that OnePlus. I'm really enjoying it. This is the second phone I've purchased on release day, and I still don't regret it. As my life has become more hectic with little kiddos, the OnePlus 6T has shown me that I can still live a relatively productive life with half of the spare time that I used to have. So good on them for making a pretty solid phone that I'm hoping to keep for a really long time. And with that, that is the end here. So thank you all so much for watching. If you want to check out my other phone videos, I think I have a playlist for that. I did some stuff on my Axon 7, obviously mentioned that in this video. So feel free to check that stuff out if you want more stuff like this. And for now, I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.